He's back in the building with us after gallivanting around the world. It's Jason Perko Perkins. Good morning, sire.
Good morning, Fel.
Sire, even.
Fel, it is so good to be back with you. And DJ, it's good to be back with you. But it's great to be back with you, Fel.
Perko, thank
so
you.
glad.
I see what you're doing there. Now, you've done a lot of traveling recently, going to a lot of conferences.
Yeah.
Give us a snapshot. How's it all been?
Yeah, it's been really good. I took about 20, 25 leaders from Australia and New Zealand churches over to the US for a couple of conferences. One is called the Orange Conference. It's a family ministries conference.
Okay.
So a lot of youth pastors, children's pastors, that kind of thing. It was phenomenal. It was a great week. And then right after that, we were at the Drive Conference, which is a conference for church leaders around the world who are trying to create churches that even people that don't typically go to church would want to engage with.
Oh, that's interesting.
So it's a part of the network of churches that I lead, the Irresistible Church Network. This would be our every 2 years global gathering, and it was just super encouraging. And you know what was really fun?
Yeah.
John Dixon and fellow Aussie was the first ever speaker at the Drive Conference. It's been going for almost 20 years now, to get a standing ovation at the end of his talk. And
What was he talking about?
He was talking about what we can learn from the early church when they were in a very pre-Christian context.
Okay.
And looking at the church today, which is also in what a lot of people are referring to a pre-Christian context, no longer post-Christian, but even more pre-Christian. What are the things that they did well to be able to garner the respect and even kind of endear themselves to a community that was pre-Christian? What can we do today that we can learn from the early church? And he just did a phenomenal job.
He's a great guy.
Really good.
Yeah, really good.
Exciting.
Now, one thing I'm thinking about you as you travel and everything, and this is the reason why we have you on here, what you see with Perko is what you get. You know, you're very good at being, and I think it might be, you know, a family tradition or the people that you hang out there. But I think of all these, you know, you're basically playing tour guide to other pastors and take them to these other conferences. There must be a pressure to perform. There must be a pressure to put on a show. Yeah. There must be a pressure to be, hey, everything's great here, guys. Yeah. How do you fight that? How do you combat that?
Yeah, I would say that I didn't do it well for a long period of time. And I would say in the last, 6 to 7 years, I've learned that you can't give what you don't possess. And so if I'm not spending an inordinate amount of time being with Jesus, then it's going to be very difficult for me to lead and love like Jesus. So even in the midst of crazy travel schedules, I still block out time for silence and solitude each day, multiple times throughout the day. I'll even, midst of a busy conference, I'll steal away to a small room or a quiet space outside and just stop to pause to be with Jesus. And then I Sabbath like every week, even when I'm on the road. We carve out time. And I invite the people that are on the tours to join me in all of those practices so that I'm giving something out of, you know, a deep well where I actually possess what I'm talking about and inviting them to kind of experience it themselves. So,
wow. Perfect. Can I ask?
Yeah.
Because I'm imagining that busy man, got a lot happening. How much time are you carving out? Like, are we talking you've got 3 or 4 hours a day, or is it small chunks of time?
Yeah, so for me, it's a larger chunk of time in the morning. So my goal each day is to actually spend about 20 minutes in silence and solitude. So that would be separate from time in the Word or time in prayer, like just pauses throughout the day. So longer periods of time in the morning, but then I pause twice a day in the middle of the day, 10:30 typically in the morning and then 2:30 in the afternoon. I'm an avid tea drinker, so it's kind of around my morning tea break and my afternoon tea break. Pause for, say, 5 to 10 minutes of silence in each of those times. And then I have a thing that I do at the end of each day. It's an old ancient practice called an evening compline, which is just a prayer of examine, reflecting over the day. How did I sense God coming to me throughout the day? And where did I see him kind of breathing life into my day? And when did I not sense that? Which helps to kind of help me understand and discern what are the things he's inviting me to be a part of and what are the things that I don't need to be a part of.
So that's in the last 6 years or so you've been doing that.
Yeah. Well, you know what? We've got to get my wife on the show at some point. Because Kristen,
please.
my wife, does an amazing job of helping to articulate the journey.
Okay.
Because I talk about things as if they were part of my life, 6-7 years ago. And she would be like, whoa. When you first started this practice of silence and solitude, like 2 minutes was a huge...
Yeah, that would be tough for me, honestly. Yeah.
Whereas now I talk about like 20 minutes a day. She's very quick to be able to help people understand, like, hey, it started this way. This is what it might look like today, but it started like this. When it comes to Sabbath, it was like a 2 to 4 hour period of time when we first started to Sabbath. Yeah. Now it's a 24-hour period of time, but it didn't start that way. And so one day we got to get her on the show.
I like it.
Please.
I like it. We'll work on it.
She'd be great at articulating the journey.
We'll take a break. We'll come back. And on the other side, I want to hear about one of the things that I know you're passionate about, that the reason why you're doing this and what you're fighting against and what you've seen examples out there as well, and maybe even in your own heart. We want to get into, one of the reasons why you're doing all of this, why you're taking the time. We'll do that next. It's Fel and DJ here with Perko on Rise and Shine. Jason Perko is still in the building with us. Perko, you were giving us some insights to some of the practices that you do, very purposeful things. My question to you is, what are you fighting against, both in yourself and what you see examples around in ministry? Why are you taking these times out? Why are you saying, I need some time with just me and Jesus?
Yeah. Jesus said this so powerfully. He said, it is possible for us to gain the whole world and lose our souls. And what does it profit a man? He asked the question, what does it profit a man if he does that? And I've, in my own journey, have experienced a little bit of that, where I was probably on an external front, kicking goals, people might say, or taking ground or winning the world, even in ministry settings. But internally, my soul felt like it was being crushed. I felt like I was losing my soul in the process of winning the world, even for Jesus. And I've found that story is not that unique. No. When I talk to ministry leaders, they talk about the same types of things, like, the church was growing or my ministry was doing really well externally, but internally, or even with our family and our marriage, things were not going great. And so that's really what I'm fighting against. And again, I go back to that phrase that I used before, you can't give what you don't possess. So I'm really working at it for myself first and foremost. But then if there's anything that helps others as a gift from that work that you do for yourself as a leader, then I want to make it available to other people. And I'm hearing from so many leaders, and I'm reading in so many headlines, unfortunately, that there are a lot of leaders that are maybe getting the whole world, but they're losing their soul in the process.
Isn't it ironic? And I mean, in a spiritual sense, we know exactly what's going on here. The enemy is attacking and things like that. But isn't it ironic that, those of us who are called into some sort of ministry, those of us who are standing up in front of the church, those of us who are, in any example there, the temptation or the man, the way that we end up thinking is we have to be false in front of people. We have to put on something instead of being honest about where we're at. There's such a big temptation towards that. Is that something that you feel that you're fighting against? Is that what you're talking about?
Absolutely. The system is designed for that very thing, that we put people up on a pedestal, whether it's the church system or the political system or even the business system. We put people up and we want them to be something we can look up to. And yet the reality is oftentimes their world doesn't reflect that, their inner world especially. But this is an age-old problem. Like if you go back to the very beginnings and you look at the greatest leaders, so think of the first leader in the nation of Israel, Saul. He lived a very disintegrated life. He had an external thing going on, and then he had this internal thing going on that was completely disconnected. He had a false self, and then he had his true self. And oftentimes I find in my own world that I can easily put on a persona, a false self, when my true self is something completely different. And I think that Jesus is inviting us to live an integrated life, that our external self and our internal self would be the same. And honestly, I think this generation is actually more open than any generation for leaders to be really authentic and to be honest about their internal lives, even if it's not perfect. I think that's really attractive to this generation right now.
You can see that in David, can't you? So you were talking about Saul, next in line, David.
Totally, yeah.
So authentic.
Yeah, in fact, I love the story of David and Goliath where David says, hey, I can't wear your armor, this external self thing.
Yeah.
He's like, and I love the language that's used there. It's ill-fitting. It doesn't fit me.
I'm not that.
And I'm not that. And his true self was completely integrated in his relationship with God and his trust in God. And I think that story of David and Goliath and how David said, hey, I can't put on Saul's false self. Yeah. I have to be my true self. That's a beautiful picture of what I think Jesus invites us into.
Man, we could talk to you literally all day long, but let's take a break here. Maybe next time you're in with us, maybe we can break this down, this theme. It sounds like a theme here that is pretty rich to mine.
Yeah, for sure.
So, Perko, we'll get you in next time. If people want to find you, all you need to do, and I've tested it out on many different search engines, and so far it hasn't failed me, Jason, Perko, Perkins, just put that in there. You pop straight up and we can follow you along there. Mate, as always, thank you so much for coming in, for your time and for your wisdom. We'll see you next time.
Looking forward to it.